Imagine the following scene. A young entrepreneur, owner of a prosperous business, decides to extend his hand to his mother-in-law in a gesture of goodwill. What she couldn't predict was that this act of generosity would become a true family minefield. This real story will show you how unmeasured ambition and a sense of deserving without foundation can endanger even the closest relationships. Larissa, a dentist who built from zero a successful dental clinic, knew the price of the effort well. For 5 years, she dedicated herself fully to work, giving up personal comforts, sleeping little and investing every penny back in the business. The result? A solid structure with 4 offices and a team of 8 qualified professionals. Everything went well until the marriage to James introduced an unpredictable element in his life. Donor Elvira, her mother-in-law. Elvira, a woman who always lived convinced that the world owed her favors, worked as an accountant in a mediocre office, receiving a modest salary. For her, however, the successful daughter-in-law was the perfect solution to her financial problems. For months, Elvira fueled a subtle manipulation campaign, constant complaints about employment, indirect comments on the family obligation and a well-rehearsed speech about how life treated her with injustice. James, a devoted son, pressed Larissa daily to give her a chance to her mother. The dentist's initial resistance faded in the face of her husband's insistence. On the first day, Elvira arrived at the clinic with Ars de Queen receiving a favor. Larissa, a professional who was, presented the duties of the position of administrator, schedules, organization of medical records, public service. The salary offered, 50,000 reais, was above the local market average for the function. The early days went on a misleading calm. Elvira pretended interest, asked superficial questions, and watched the movement. Larissa even thought her concerns were unfounded. Until the mask began to fall. First came the delays. Then the early exit under the excuse of a migraine. The following week, Elvira simply ignored work hours and appeared in the middle of the morning, as if the work was a mere suggestion. When Larissa called her to a conversation, the mother-in-law sat with the posture of those about to dictate the rules. "We need to adjust my working conditions," Elvira announced without ceremonies. "What conditions?" "We combined everything in the contract," Larissa replied confused. "Listen well, my face," said the mother-in-law, with a condescending smile. "I'm not in the age of running back and forth. I have enough experience to solve everything over the phone. From now on, I will appear just to look for my salary, 80-5,000 per month. Not a penny less." Larissa felt the blood boil. That woman, who had never moved a straw to help build the clinic, now required an executive salary for a job she didn't even want to do. The answer was firm. "I'm sorry, Donor Elvira, but I think you confused employment with allowance. Here you work to receive, not the other way around." What followed was a show of emotional blackmail. Elvira threatened to tell her son, accusing her daughter-in-law of disrespect. Larissa, however, was not naive. "I knew that scene was just the first act of a much larger piece." In the following days, the mother-in-law disappeared from work, but did not stop calling every hour, demanding her new agreement be accepted. At home, James exploded in failures, repeating the mother's speech about family values and ingratitude. Larissa heard everything silent as she mentally adjusted the last details of her plan. When Elvira finally returned to the clinic, she went to sit at the reception table and spend hours on social networks, ignore. I walk patients and overload the team. The drop of water came when the chief nurse, a loyal employee since the inauguration, couldn't stand it anymore. "Dr. Larissa, this is unsustainable." His mother-in-law turned the reception into a living room. "The patients are outraged, and we are having to do her work." It was time to act. The next morning Larissa called Elvira for a conversation. The mother-in-law arrived with a triumphant smile, convinced that she had finally bent her daughter-in-law. But the surprise was just beginning. "I'm willing to discuss your conditions," Larissa said calmly. "It was time for you to get into the line," said Elvira, already celebrating internally. "But first, I need to evaluate your skills. I will give you a test, answer 10 patient calls and schedule the schedules correctly." Elvira wrinkled her nose, but accepted. What she didn't know was that all calls were being recorded. And what followed was an epic disaster. The mother-in-law was rude to customers, she messed up the entire schedule, gave wrong information and, in a moment of pure arrogance, suggested that an elderly woman solve her dental problem with homemade teas. When he finished, Elvira leaned back in her chair, pleased. Now see how competent I am. You can hire me for 80,000 to work from home. Larissa smiled, but this time it was a smile from those who already had the situation under control. In fact, Donor Elvira, what I saw was a person who offended 4 patients, created operational chaos and showed complete disdain by customers. This does not deserve increase, deserves dismissal for just cause. The mother-in-law stood up, furiously, ready for the scandal. But Larissa raised her hand, cutting her impetus. However, he continued slowly, I'm willing to accept your proposal. 80,000 a month to work remotely. Excellent idea. Elvira was gaping. Like this. Simple. Let's formalize you as a consultant for excellence in service. Your mission will be to analyze our flaws and suggest improvements. After all, after this demonstration, you are the ideal person to show us exactly what not to do. The silence that followed was eloquent. Elvira finally understood that she had underestimated her daughter-in-law. Larissa was not just a competent professional, she was a strategist who would not allow anyone, not even her family, to endanger what she had built with such sacrifice. And this, my friends, is the difference between those who work to conquer and who thinks the world owes you everything. Which side would you choose to be? Elvira's face lit with a triumphant smile. Finally, my daughter-in-law recognized my value. Must have thought. But there was a crucial detail. His remote work would not be a walk in the park. Each client lost by rudeness. 10,000 fine. Each complaint for disrespect. 5,000. Each delay or disorganization in the schedule. 7,000. Larissa opened the calculator with a glacial calm and began to add. Let's see, 4 complaints today, 20,000. Messing schedule, another 7,000. 3 customers who cancelled because of their service, 30,000. Total so far, 57,000. You owe to the clinic. What a fine. Elvira exploded, her eyes wide. Did you go crazy? I am an impeccable professional. Impeccable? Larissa arched an eyebrow. I just applied your own principles, Elvira. Did you want executive salary? Therefore assumes the responsibility of the executive. No privileges without consequences. The mother-in-law began to struggle like a harassed animal, shaking hands, the embargoed voice. Timur will know that. He will make you pay. He already knows. Larissa slid her cell phone on the table, where a recording rolled in low volume, Elvira's shrill voice humiliating an elderly patient, the arrogant tone with a desperate mother. I sent everything to him. I think, we'll appreciate your profession together. Onalism. Elvira's face was purple. She took her hand to her chest, simulating a dramatic heart attack, but Larissa didn't even win. He continued to enter the impassive calculator. Ah, I forgot to mention, 7 complaints against the administrator in the last days. More 35,000. Total, 92,000. How do you prefer to pay? In sight or in installments? I won't pay anything, Elvira shouted, the veins of her neck jumping. So work until you pay off. Larissa smiled, cold. 50,000 per month. 2 years of honest work. Or, made a strategic break we can solve in court. I have evidence, witnesses, and a lawyer eager to sue damage to the reputation of the clinic. That's when Timur came in. His cold gaze said everything. He had heard the recordings. He had seen his mother, who always idealized, to turn into a monster of selfishness. Mom, what is this? His voice was broken, not for anger, but for the disappointment. You promised you were going to work right. Elvira ran to him, tears dripping, but Timur retreated as if she burned. She set me a trap. He recorded everything on purpose. No one forced you to treat patients like garbage. Timur was pale. Larissa is right. This is not work, it is sabotage. You do not deserve a penny, it deserves to return each real that stole from the clinic with its incompetence. Elvira's mask collapsed. She threw the badge and keys on the table with a theatrical gesture. I'm resigning. And never walk here. Excellent. Larissa did not change. We signed the termination for just cause. But before. He slid a paper on the table. 89,000. Your debt after discounting the salary of the days worked. You are crazy. Elvira grabbed the doorknob, the body shaking. I won't give a penny, then we see each other in court. Larissa crossed her arms. Recordings, testimonials, cancellation records. It will be a quick process. And expensive for you. Timur rubbed his face, exhausted. Mom, sells your golden bracelets or borrows to friends that you so much impresses with stories of the rich daughter-in-law. End with that. The scandal lasted more half an hour. Elvira cried, cursed, threatened to sue everyone, demanded that Timur divorced from the witch. But for the first time, the son did not give in. There was no comforting hug, no excuses invented. Only the weight of silence and account to pay. In the end, Elvira signed an agreement. He would return the salary received and disappear forever from the clinic. Larissa, in a generosity gesture, gave up 92,000 fine. The lesson was already given. For the next 3 years, Elvira got no other job. From time to time, he let out comments on financial difficulties, but Larissa responded with a vague smile, too bad. You may have thought of it before destroying the reputation of a business that wasn't yours. Timur, in turn, opened his eyes. He stopped idolizing his mother and began to see Larissa not like a rival, but as the partner who saved the clinic and, in breach, saved a life of manipulation. Your marriage has strengthened. The team began to respect Larissa not only as a boss, but as someone who dared to put limits where no one had dared. And Elvira? Even today, in the beauty salon or lunches with her friends, she tells, with tears in her eyes, like the ungrateful DA had betrayed her. The friends, however, already know the truth. They shake their heads, not pitying her, but with Timur. Poor, having such a mother. Because some lessons are not learned with words. They learn with consequences. And Larissa? She only did what Elvira never expected. She returned every blow with interest.